My contribution was actually written as a poem then for a song by a chap called Jake Thackeray. He became a school teacher before he became a performer. He worked in France for some years, and I think he got to know the work of Georges Brassens, if any of you know his work, a poet and a chansonnier, as the French would have it. So Jake Thackeray got to writing poems and then performing them, singing them. One of his most famous, it's a little bit risque, so I won't do that one tonight, but Sister Josephine, you may have heard it. Oh, Sister Josephine, the funny looking nun you've ever seen. But anyway, mine is different. Mine is about a guy who was really quite popular, although very clumsy. And the trouble is with Jake Thackeray, he wasn't versatile like Stanley Holloway. Stanley Holloway was a brilliant singer, actor, and also famous for some of the monologues like Albert and the Lion, which has been one of my party pieces for a year or two now, which I can recite at the drop of a hat, or most of it. But his songs have lived on, but I'm afraid he didn't live very long himself because, not being versatile, he fell out of favour. So here's one, as I say, spoken, not sung, and it's called Leopold Alcox. Leopold Alcox, my distant relation, came to my flat for a brief visitation. He's been here all February, damn and blast him. My nerves and my furniture may not outlast him. Leopold Alcox is accident prone. He's lost my bath plug, he's ruptured my phone. My anti-rhinos, my motorbike, my sofa. There isn't anything he can't trip over. As he roams through my rooms, all the pussycats scatter. My statuettes tremble, then plummet, then shatter. My table lamps tumble with grim regularity. My cut glass has crumbled, and so is my charity. Leopold Alcox, an uncanny creature, he can't take tea without some misadventure. He looks up from his teacup with a smirk on his features and a slice of porcelain clamped between his dentures. He's upset my goldfish. He's jinxed my wisteria. My budgie's gone broody. My tortoise hysteria. He cleans my teapots, my saucepans with Brasso, and leaves chocolate fingerprints on my Picasso. Leopold Alcox, never known to fail, working his way through my frail Chippendale. One blow from his thighs, which are fearsomely strong, would easily fracture the wings of a swan. I brought my girl home for some Turkish moussaka. Up comes old Leopold. I know when I'm knackered. He spills the vino, the great evil beaver, drenching her jumpsuit and my joie de vivre. Leopold Alcox, stirring my spleen. You are the grit in my life's Vaseline. A pox on you, Alcox. You've been here all February. Go home and leave me alone with my debris. So Leopold Alcox, my distant relation, has gone away home after his visitation. I glimpsed him waving bye-bye this last minute, waving his hand with my doorknob still in it. So, thank you for being attentive. So,
this better be good.
As I said, it's going to be a jolly poem. I was going to do something by Rupert Brooke, but that was a bit serious. So this is a good lady you see a lot on TV. Pam Ayres. Have you heard of Pam Ayres?
Oh yes.
Yes.
Oh yes.
Yes, she comes from North Berkshire, so she got a bit of an accent. So I was hoping the poem I'd chosen, my Yorkshire accent might sort of give some inflection to similar to hers, but maybe not. She's a very inventive lady. She can turn her hand to doing poems about everything. I was looking at some of them today. She did one about aerobics, one about battery hens, and one about hedgehogs. So I think she gets up in the night, has a thought, and writes a poem. So this one that I'm going to read to you is called, she's been thinking about the ill-treated cowboy horse. This one's called The Horse's Farewell to His Cowboy. Farewell to you, cowboy. My day is done of rounding up the cows in the heat of the sun, of roping the dogies and branding the steer, and having your gun going off in my ear. I gallop the prairie without any thanks, your great silver spurs in my bony old flanks. I've seen many things in my life, it is true, but never a cowboy more stupid than you. Cowboy, can you hear me inside the saloon? I'm waiting out here in the light of the moon. My hard-working days, they are past and gone by. I am bound for the great clover field in the sky. Farewell to the feel of your filthy old jeans. Farewell to the smell of your coffee and beans. Farewell to you and your Stenson and chaps, cheating at poker and shooting the craps. You rode me too far and you rode me too far. Mile after mile of you shouting, yah! Hounded by outlaws away down the track with a gun on my tail and a birk on my back. I never remember you treating me right. I was tried to a cactus and hungry all night. When I was weary and dying of thirst, I always knew it was you who came first. Well, maybe you are mighty quick on the draw, but cowboy, you're slow with the fodder and the straw. Look at me, partner, I'm all skin and bone. So tonight I ride into the sunset alone. He'll have a shock when he comes out of there, me with my forelegs sticking up in the air. Don't say goodbye or thanks for the ride. My friend, it's too little, too late, I have died. Won't somebody lift up the old saddle flaps and gently unbuckle the filthy old straps? My eyes have grown weary, I'm tired of talk. As from tonight, he bloody well can walk. Thank you.
The first one is actually by an American called Ripley Dunlap Saunders. He was born in 1856 and he died in 1915. He was a newspaperman, an author and a creator. And I think his best known book was Colonel Todd Hunter of Missouri. And this poem is called A Laugh. A laugh is just like sunshine. It strengthens all the day. It tips the peak of life with light and drives the clouds away. The soul grows glad that hears it and feels its courage strong. A laugh is just like sunshine for cheering folks along. A laugh is just like music. It lingers in the heart. And where its melody is heard, the ills of life depart. And happy thoughts come crowding, its joyful notes to greet. A laugh is just like music for making living sweet.
Lovely.
Very nice.
The other one is perhaps slightly different. It's by William Golding. And I'm sure you all know who Golding was. He was born in UK and Cornwall in 1911. He grew up in Wiltshire. He died in 1993. And I think he won the Nobel Prize for Literature and the Booker Prize. I think his most notable work was probably Lord of the Rings or Rites of Passage. And this is
Flies, I think you mean.
Sorry, Lord of the Flies. This one is really for the ladies. I think women are foolish to pretend that they are equal to men. They are far superior and always have been. Whenever you give a woman, whatever you give a woman, she will make it greater. If you give her sperm, she will make a baby. If you give her a house, she will make a home. If you give her groceries, she will give you a meal. If you give her a smile, she will give you her heart. She multiplies and enlarges what is given to her. So if you give her any crap, be ready for a ton of shit.
Until that point,
Little naughty, I'm sorry.
lovely. Until that point, I thought he was a bigger creep even than I am.
Again.
Thank you.
Like that.
They were lovely both. But can I call on Mary now? She has some poems for us. You're going to do a couple now, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, lovely.
Right, my first poem is called A Friend.
Oh.
And these are three ladies going swimming. Now you can pick out which one's me.
The good looking one, yes.
I think Irene and Susan are there as well. You can figure it out. Anyway, this was sent from me. I don't know if you remember meeting the two girls from New Zealand
Yeah.
at a barbecue.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was sent me by Sue, one of the girls from New Zealand. And it's called A Friend. 3 good friends went for a swim. The one who was fat wished she was thin. The one who was curvy wished she was clever. The one who was clever wished she swam better. The really great swimmer wished she was witty. The one who was witty wished she was pretty. All 3 friends thought the other 2 were just fine, if only they could let their own bright light shine. So throw on your swimsuit if you're fat or you're thin. Enjoy fun and friendship. Love the skin that you're in.
Great.
Very good.
And the second one, was one I saw on Facebook, and it just I thought, oh, this is what life used to be like. And it's called A Poem About Life as It Was. We met and married a long time ago. We worked long hours when wages were low. No telly, no bath, for times were hard, just a cold water tap and a walk in the yard. No holidays abroad, no carpets on floors. We'd coal on the fire and didn't lock doors. Our children arrived, no pill in those days. We brought them up without any state aid. They were safe going out to play in the park, and old folk could go for a walk in the dark. No Valium, drugs, and no LSD. We cured most of our ill with a good cup of tea. No vandals, no muggings, not much to rob. We felt we were rich with a couple of bob. People seemed happier in those far-off days, kinder and caring in so many ways. Milkmen and paper boys would whistle and sing. A night at the pictures was quite a mad fling. We got our share of troubles and strife, but we had to face it, the pattern of life.
Yeah.
So I have always liked Edward Lear's limericks, which are sort of quite nice in their own way. He was born in 1812, surprising enough, the same year as Robert Browning. And during his life, he spent some time in Italy, which has a theme here, because the well-known poem is The Owl and the Pussycat. But after he died, some papers were found with an outline of a follow-up poem from The Owl and the Pussycat. And but some of the stanzas and some of the words were missing. So I've filled in those as best I can. So I'll read the original poem first, and then continue with the second one. Some of the, I've mentioned Italy because some of the places it mentioned are in Calabria and Sila, which is a city in Calabria in Italy. The owl and the pussycat went to sea in a beautiful pea-green boat. They took some honey and plenty of money wrapped up in a £5 note. The owl looked up at the stars above and sang to a small guitar. Oh, lovely pussy, oh, pussy, my love, what a beautiful pussy you are. you are, you are. What a beautiful pussy you are. Pussy said to the owl, you elegant fowl, how charmingly sweet you sing. Oh, let us be married, too long we have tarried, but what shall we do for a ring? They sailed away for a year and a day to the land where the bong tree grows. And there in a wood a piggy wig stood, with a ring at the end of his nose, his nose, his nose, with a ring at the end of his nose. Dear pig, are you willing to sell for 1 shilling your ring? Said the piggy, I will. So they took it away and were married next day by the turkey who lives on the hill. They dined on mince and slices of quince, which they ate with a runcible spoon, and hand in hand, on the edge of the sand, they danced by the light of the moon, the moon, the moon. They danced by the light of the moon.
Lovely.
That's the first one.
Excellent.
That took me a while.
I can do the second one now, or do you want me to come back to it later?
No, please carry on, please.
Okay, right. Our mother was the pussycat, our father was the owl, and so we partly little beasts and partly little fowl. The brothers of our family have feathers and they hoot, while all the sisters dress in fur and have long tails to boot. We all believe that little mice for food are singularly nice. Our mother died long years ago. She was a lovely cat. Her tail was 5 feet long and grey with stripes. But what of that? Inside the forest on the east of far Calabria's shore, she tumbled from a lofty tree. None ever saw her more. Our owly father long was ill from sorrow and surprise, but with the feathers of his tail he wiped his weeping eyes. And in the hollow of a tree in Sila's inmost maze, we made a happy home, and there we pass our obvious days. From Regia's Consenda many owls about us flit, and bring us worldly news for which we do not care a bit. We watch the sun each morning rise beyond Taranto's strait. We go out catching voles and mice before it gets too late. And when the evening shades begin to lengthen from the trees, and we have eaten all the mice with honey, sure as bees is bees, we wander up and down the shore, the place they landed long before. Or tumble over head and heels, but never, never more can see the far Grumbulian plains, of which we know our father pains, and weeps, as they could both have wept, or many a vanished scenes. This is the way our father moans, he is so very green. Our father still preserves his voice, and when he sees a star, he often sings a plaintive song to that original guitar. He thinks and muses deep in thought of his unusual life. Some memories come flooding back of his bemusing wife. The pot in which our parents took the honey in their boat, but all the money has been spent beside the £5 note. The owls who come and bring us news do often show dismay, because we take no interest in the politics of the day. And I finished that with a single word, Brexit.
Well, this is by David Kossoff, and he became quite famous because he used to tell his poems about the Old Testament and the New Testament, and he gained quite a few awards for them. And then we got to know him quite well when his wife died, and he used to come up to the Lake District with us to paint. There was quite a few of us, and about 15 of us used to paint. And one day I was sitting next to him at dinner. I think it was, that's a picture of him there. And I'm in pink, and David's the one with the beard.
Can you see that at all?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I said to him, a lot of people remember him of our age. I don't know if any of you remember him. He used to appear about 6:45 on the radio and talk to God in his own way. So this is a form of a prayer book. And I'll read you the first one. He had a very famous guitarist son called Paul Kossoff, who unfortunately died aged 25. And my son, who's 61, remembers him very well. And nobody here remembers him, I shouldn't think. But he was very famous at the time. He also appeared in A Kid and Two Farthings and things like that.
Yes, yeah.
So
you got
it's
the
in
right
the right
place,
light,
haven't you?
yes. Got my magnifying glass. Lord, word, it's about the world, your world, to be made in 6 days, resting on the 7th and being pleased with your work. And rightly so, Lord. It was a beautiful world you made, beautiful. Well, Lord, it's getting dirty. We're dirtying it, Lord. Hang on, the magnifying glass. You made the seas and the creatures therein, Lord, and we are choking the creatures with filth and oil, Lord. Pardon, Peter. You made all the creatures that fly and swim and live on land, and you looked upon them and said, good. Well, Lord, there's quite a few you wouldn't be able to find or not recognize if you did not find them. Mutants, Lord, scientific crossbreeding and such. Lord, you made us. Sorry, the lights were. You made us, and from out of those ribs made the rest of us. Wait a minute, a bit more. He did all the drawings as well in the book. And you made us clever, Lord, some cleverer than others. And the really clever ones try to improve on your work, Lord. They make a lot of noise and a lot of smoke and a lot of what are called waste products. And cleverest of all, a lot of what are called indestructible refuse. So we are dirtying up your world, Lord. Pollutants, Lord. Effluents and such. It's very topical, of course, isn't it? With all the wonderful gifts you gave us, Lord, riches beyond imagination. And now we have the fastest roads and the fastest cars and the fastest planes, and we kill ourselves by the thousand. In a second, in a pile-up, in enormous noise, in considerable indignity, Lord. 70 years and 10, if you're lucky. Every spring, you make it all new again, Lord. Every summer, it all grows. Every autumn, you show us colours to take our breath away. Every winter, you remind us who's boss. We keep reminding, Lord. We litter the place. We clash with the colours. And worse, to be quite honest, Lord, a lot of us don't notice. You forgive a lot of sin, Lord. How do you keep your temper with indifference?
I selected two. I didn't go to the what we might call the published poems. I selected one which was written by a friend of mine, Adrian Tin, you may know her, and one was one I wrote myself, which through which I indulged myself exercising some of my prejudices. So that I'm not so sure about. But anyway, the first one by Adrian Tin, she wrote following a Zoom meeting with her great-granddaughter Lottie. And she asked the question, it was just before Christmas this, what would you like for Christmas? And Lottie's reply, with a sort of frowning forehead, was a cuddle. And this poem that Adrian wrote is very topical, and maybe some of us can actually identify with. Anyway, the title, as I say, of this poem is all I want for Christmas is a cuddle. So, all I want for Christmas is a cuddle. I really don't want any more than that. You can keep your books and tokens and your posh plush coats and your warm and fluffy, cosy knitted hat. All I want for Christmas is a cuddle. I want to hear you knocking at my door. I don't need trees of tinsel or a chocolate box. I just want you coming to my house once more. All I want for Christmas is a cuddle. I want to see your lovely smiling face. I wish to be with family. I see you gathered, to see you gathered round, to talk and laugh together at my place. All I want for Christmas is a cuddle. With all that's going on, it's made me see that in our lives, what is important never can be bought. And a cuddle from the family is free.
Lovely.
Yes.
So that's, do you want to hear the other one?
Yes, please. Yes.
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 Well,
I can see your epiglottis.
yeah, well, I
You shouldn't be looking.
I have to look over my laptop to my computer behind where it's all where the words are.
You've got it written on the wall behind the.
Because I'm too old to remember these. I have to read them. Yes, I mean mine is very much tongue in cheek, but I'm a member of a creative writing group through U3A, and we do little exercises from time to time. And actually, I prefer to write prose, but we did an exercise using with poetry. So this is one I wrote. I say very much tongue in cheek. I am confused, I know not why. It could be just my age, as now I'm told it's good to lie, for truth will cause outrage. To say I'm British, I was proud. We have a noble past. Instead, we must confess out loud. Exploiters first and last. I loved the stories from my youth, Dick Barton, Biggles, Scott. But now we learn they were uncouth. Each was an empire clot. Fancy dress parties were the norm, togged like a foreign brother. But God help those who so perform and thus mock another. When I was young, to show some class, I'd walk outside my date. A daughter told me I was crass. I should keep up to date. So on I stumble in my mind, floundering like a turtle, determined in the end to find how to square the circle.
This poem was written in 1871. It was actually published in Through the Looking Glass, which I'm sure you'll all know was the sequel to Alice in Wonderland, written by Lewis Carroll. And I think it's interesting, and the reason I chose it is because sometimes when you're looking at poems like this, you find out that that's where words came from, and there's a couple of words that actually entered the English language for the first time in this poem. So hopefully you'll have a little chortle while I read them, while I'm galumphing through this poem. See if you can pick them out. Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll. 'Twas brillig and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves and the moon ruths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jubjub bird, and shun the frumious Bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand. Long time the manxome foe he sought. So rested he by the tum-tum tree and stood a while in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffling through the tulgey wood and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O frabjous day! Callooh, Calais, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borough groves, and the moon raths outgrabe.
Well, I've never been a great reader of poetry, but I thought John Betjeman has always made me smile. Has a way of expressing himself. And when I used to work in the city, he lived in a street near Charterhouse, and I walked past his house, and there was a pub just round the corner. And that's a bit appropriate for this particular poem because it's about a pub, and it's also appropriate because it expresses a view that might surprise us when we visit the pubs after the end of lockdown. So it's called The Village Inn. The Village Inn, the dear old inn, so ancient, clean, and free from sin. True centre of our rural life, where Hodge sits down beside his wife and talks of Marx and nuclear fission, with all a rustic's intuition. Ah, more than church or school or hall, the village inn's the heart of all. So spake the brewer's PRO, a man who really ought to know, for he is paid for saying so. And then he kindly gave to me a lovely coloured booklet free. 'Twas full of prose that sang the praise of coaching inns in Georgian days, showing how public houses are more modern than the motor car, more English than the Weald or Wold, and almost equally as old, and run for love and not for gold, until I felt a filthy swine for loathing beer and liking wine, and rotten to the very core for thinking village inns a bore, and villages bore more sure to roam to village inns than stay at home. I'm sorry, I didn't read that very well. And village bores more sure to roam to village inns than stay at home. And then I thought, I must be wrong. So up I rose and went along to that old village alehouse, where in neon lights is written Bear. Ah, where's the inn that once I knew, with brick and chalky wall, up which the knobbly pear tree grew, for fear the place would fall? Oh, that old pot house isn't there. It wasn't worth our while. You'll find we have rebuilt the Bear in early Georgian style. But winter jasmine used to cling with golden stars ashine, where rain and wind would wash and swing the crudely painted sign. And where's the roof of golden thatch, the chimney stack of stone, the crown glass panes that used to match each sunset with their own? Oh, now the walls are red and smart, the roof has emerald tiles, the neon signs are work of art and visible for miles. The bar inside was papered green, the settles grained like oak. The only light was paraffin, the wood fire used to smoke. And photographs from far and wide were hung around the room, the hunt, the church, the football side, and Kitchener of Khartoum. Our air-conditioned bars are lined with washable material. The stools are steel, the taste refined, hygienic and ethereal. Hurrah, hurrah for hearts of oak, away with inhibitions, for here's a place to sit and soak in sanitary conditions.
I'm going to read a poem that's written by a very good friend of mine, who I met When we first came back from America and we moved here, Barbara Miller, who you all know just about, told me go down to WA classes at Northgate Centre, and I went down there. About the first person I met, this was in 1974, was Verona Bass. And we continued, we saw an awful lot of each other when our children were young. She moved to, some of you may know her, I think she used to live in Crescent Road. She moved to Bath about 20 years ago and has been involved in literary and storytelling sessions since she's been there. She grew up in a small farm in South Africa and left South Africa after she'd been to college to come over to Europe. And she has written, started about 4 years ago, writing sort of leaflet books of poetry about her childhood, her very young childhood in South Africa. And I was going to read 2 of them. This particular one, called Long Shadows, it has 2 words. She was an Afrikaans speaker when she was young. And there are 2 words in here. Kayas are mud huts where people live, and donga is a channel that has been, you know, when you get a storm channel of rain that clears a sort of path through the land, that's a donga. Anyway, I'll read this to you. It seemed to me that it was very evocative reading them. It's very evocative of the heat and the dust and the animals that she experienced. And when you write in poetry, you can condense that into just the really meaningful words. It doesn't have to, you don't have all the conjunctions and things that, so I thought it is very evocative to me of what her life was like. But this is, this is her looking back, actually, this particular poem. I play with my silhouette, sharply defined by the strong sun, elongating it, changing my shape in the land where I was born. I called on sympathy from the Kayas. We stamped each other's shadows in a game, both barefooted, both black-skinned when we're shadowed, a matched pair as we play. She chooses the drama in a playroom, built with the mud brick technique, like the mud hut she lives in. Designed as a storeroom, really, but given over to us to use for our games. Cardboard boxes demarcate rooms. You big girl, an imperious look, her shining eyes and lithe body, and I'll be the madam. In my cast-offs she struts, wears the new look. Her feet, high heels, the swirling deal skirt imagined. Sippity preens, giving herself to the game. In time, I forgot her as I chose my life path. Didn't think to follow hers as we moved on. Now, with nostalgic hindsight, I wonder about her life, shaped by the shadow years of apartheid. Did she finish school? Did she go to work in town or become marooned by childbirth? Did she die early of AIDS, like so many others, leaving orphans? Did her children get to vote in the first free elections? Queuing for hours, jubilant. Did Nelson Mandela give her hope? And would she remember me, the one who went away? I was her friend who called her to join me, standing at the donga and cupping my hands, calling across the divide in our homeland, South Africa. Sepati, kom spiel, come and play.
This brings back very happy memories for me when I was teaching at the international school in Helsinki, and I read lots of these poems to them, and then they recited them off by heart. My 7- and 8-year-olds and they wrote their own poems as well. And so we got all the parents in for a poetry afternoon. But my favourites come from
A.A. Milne.
A. Milne. And when Ian was only a short while ago, there was a follow-up to this. This is Now We Are Six, the first one. But then there was a follow-up, Now We Are 60. in only a very short while ago. Well, you know how old he is, probably.
You're going to read that one first.
Yeah, I am, yes. So this is the first one from Now We Are Six. And it's called The Good Little Girl. It's funny how often they say to me, Jane, have you been a good girl? Have you been a good girl? And when they have said it, they say it again. Have you been a good girl? Have you been a good girl? And I go to a party, I go out to sea, I go to an aunt for a week at the sea. I come back from school or playing a game. Whenever I come from or wherever I come from, it's always the same. Well, have you been a good girl, Jane? It's always the end of the loveliest day. Have you been a good girl? Have you been a good girl? I went to the zoo and they waited to say, have you been a good girl? Have you been a good girl? Well, what did they think that I went there to do? And why should I want to be bad at the zoo? And should I be likely to say if I had? So that's why it's funny of Mummy and Dad. This asking and asking in case I was bad. Well, have you been a good girl, Jane? And then the follow-up was from And Now We Are 60 is called The Caring Society, after The Good Little Girl. Whenever I ring up, I get this reply, customer service is how may I help you? And when I've told them, they cheerfully cry, bear with me, would you? I'll just put you through. It could be the gas board, it could be BT, it could be the council concerning our tree, it could be the dealer about the new car, or a medical query that's rather bizarre. Bear with me, I'm putting you through. It's always the same when they put you on hold. Our lines are busy, you're held in a queue. Unless there be doubt, it's repeated tenfold. Our lines are still busy, you're still in the queue. And so I just sit and I fume and I fret. Is it worth hanging up? It's a pretty fair bet that someone will answer me just as I do. And the next time I'll go to the back of the queue and once again hear that familiar coo. Hello, may I help you?
Well, I'll just do this one. It was an idea that Peter gave us during lockdown. And he had written a wee poem based on a familiar, you'll recognise it. I'm busy doing nothing, drinking cups of tea, playing on my iPad and watching our TV. I'm busy going nowhere, drinking lots of gin and lime. I'd like to be unhappy, but I really don't have the time.
This one's called Sunbeam Polish. How do I know the smoothness of the waxy pale surface when the tin is first opened? The pungent paraffin-based odour prickling the nostrils. I was there. How can I feel the waxy blobs that need to be crumbled under the cloth, the lumpen cloth, clotted with the congealed substance, the globules that catch in the grooves of the floorboards? I touched them. How is it that I can still feel the strong web of fabric across the top of the brush? The strong bristles splaying slightly as they rasp on the floorboards. I too held it. How do I know the sway of the body as the wax is applied to the wooden floor? I was there, on her back, in a sling. I know the reach of an arm to push the brush forward, backwards and sideways. My arm moves with her arm. My hand grips the brush. I know the flow, aware of the scraping sound. I am there. Her sweet smell mingles with the acrid odour of the sunbeam polished, shining up the farmhouse floors. I am. The pale undersides of her hands, the strong black fingers, the crescents, the quick, the breath, the movement, the sway. I am.
Lovely. I have a very small contribution to finish with, because you were kind enough to buy me a book by Pam Ayres for my birthday, and you can see me all right. And I read it, and the stories are very funny, and I had a good laugh with it. So thank you very much. She used to, if you recall, write poems at the drop of a hat, and she was on a flight home, and the stewardess, if I can call her that, she said that, oh, do I recognise you, madam? Are you Pam Ayres? She said, yes. Short time, excuse me, I got cramp. Short time later, she came back. Sorry, I got cramp in the leg.
Oh, the title of the poem.
Short time later, she came back and said, oh, you used to write limericks and things, didn't you? No, you used to. We get that a lot. She said, well, yes, I do. Could you write one about the pilot? Pam said, sorry, I don't know anything about him. Well, she said, he's a nice man, comes from Chorley Wood. I don't think I can do that. I don't know him well enough, said Pam Ayres. Anyway, she thought about it. And as they landed, were coming into Gatwick on the flight, the glide path, she did come up with something, but she saw fit not to send it up to the cockpit. And it went like this. I am your jolly pilot. I come from Chorley Wood. Can someone land this plane for me? Because I'm not very good. So many, many thanks for everybody for coming up with your suggestions and taking part. It's been an evening of chiefly ourselves, like the music hall. Most enjoyable. And